G'day guys, welcome back to Aussie Savvy Cents, where we talk about Australian personal finance, investing in property, shares, and of course, lovely precious metals. And in today's video, it's going to be all about the Australian 50-cent coin, specifically from the year of 1966 that we see over here. An absolutely beautiful coin and arguably is Australia's most preferred method to stack silver. Now I'm going to get into a little bit more as to the reasons why that is the case towards the end of the video. But I'll first of all go through the full history as to how the 50 cent, this particular 50 cent piece came to be. And for those of you who have watched my previous videos, this is actually going to be the last video about the Australian junk silver series. So if you're interested to see all the other silver coins that I have that's been circulated in Australia that's considered junk silver here in Australia, have a look at the pop-up banner above. Now without further ado, let's get into the specifications of this coin. So the round 50 cent coin from 1966 has a total weight of 13.28 grams, has a diameter of 31.5 millimeters across. It's about 2 millimeters thick. As you can see, it has a milled edge to it as well. Absolutely beautiful here. Now, if we have a look at the silver content of the coin, it is approximately 80% silver and 20% copper, which means the amount of silver that's in this coin weighs approximately 10.62 grams of silver. And if you translate it to troy ounces, that's about 0.3416 troy ounces of silver per coin. So theoretically, if you had 3 of these, you would hold a little bit more than a troy ounce of silver. How cool is that? A whole troy ounce of silver for the face value of $1.50 Australian. Pretty interesting to think about. Now let's have a close look at the design of the 50 cent coin itself. If we have a look at the reverse here first and foremost, on this side of the 50 cent coin, we've got the Australian Commonwealth Coat of Arms, and that has been created by an acclaimed master goldsmith and sculptor by the name of Stuart Devlin. How cool is that? And what he did is that he designed the coin to have a kangaroo and an emu propping up a central shield, and the shield has 6 sections that contain each of Australia's 6 states, the official badge of each of Australia's 6 states. So you've got New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, and of course Tasmania. Though one would question why Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory wasn't included. Maybe they didn't have a badge, maybe because they're territories and they're not necessarily states. But still, a very cool design. It has the Federation star on the top of the shield. It's got the denomination of 50 down below, signifying that this is denominated as 50 cent. And you've got golden wattle, which is the native leaves and blossoms that symbolizes Australia's national floral emblem. Now, fun fact, now just reading up on the design of this coin, fun fact about the kangaroo and the emu, they were chosen to be a part of the coat of arms to symbolize a nation that is moving forward, that is advancing forward, because the kangaroo and the emu can't actually go backwards as easily. Really cool symbolism there. Now let's have a look at the reverse of the coin. And we've got Queen Elizabeth II, the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II. We've got Australia on the side here, and symbolizing this coin is only legal tender in Australia, and of course the year it was minted in 1966. An absolutely beautiful piece to have. Now what makes the 1966 Australian 50 cent coin so special? What makes it so highly sought after by coin collectors and stackers here in Australia? Well, to understand that, we'll probably have to go back to the year of, well, let's say 1965, when we were still using the old imperial system, the old British system for our coins. And that would have been these ones here. Let's zoom up a little bit there. So back in the days, before 1966 came over, before we went into the decimal system, we had the pre-decimal system where we used the British system of coinage. Why did we move over to the new decimal system in 1966? Well, there's two main reasons for that. And the first one was because of global standards. Most of the world had already switched to a decimal currency, and staying with the old British imperial system would have caused unnecessary losses for commerce and slowed down international trade. And the other reason was quite simply because it was simpler maths. I mean, 100 cents equals to $1, and then from there, the sky's the limit. Whereas the old system, you had to count on the basis of 12 and 20. How confusing is that? I mean, like, you needed, 12 pennies to make up a shilling, and then you needed, 20 shillings to make up a pound. It was so confusing. So this was a much more simpler method to count the coins. Now, how did the conversion really work between the two? You start off with the lowest denomination, which was the half penny at the time, and then that would equate to 1 cent. A whole penny, or 1 penny, would give you 2 cents. Unfortunately for the threepence, this had an equivalent value of about 2.5 cents, but unfortunately it wouldn't be the decimal system if you had 2.5 cents. So there was no 2.5 cents. But if you had two of the threepence, then you'd have a sixpence, which was the equivalent value of 5 cents. If you double the sixpence, it gives you a shilling. If you double the 5 cents, it gives you 10 cents. And that's its equivalent value. And if you double the shilling, it gives you the florin. If you double 10 cents, it gives you 20 cents. Obviously, it's very easy, equivalent value here. And that brings us to the 50-cent coin. This was supposed to be the top coin. When I say the top coin, I mean the highest denominated coin, circulating coin that we would have for the decimal system. And because it was such a high decimal coin, high premium coin, this was the only coin that actually had silver. As I said, it has 80% silver, whereas the rest of these coins were actually made out of nickel and copper, or copper-nickel alloy. So there's no precious metal content in them. And moving on from a system that did have silver in its coinage, so between the years of 1910 through to 1945, you had 92.5% silver, or sterling silver, in the coins. And then from the years of 1946 all the way through to 1963, or 1964 in the case of the threepence, they were made out of 50% silver. But now we've got coins where it didn't have any more silver except for the top coin here that we see. It was supposed to be the premium coin of our currency. And this had an equivalent value of 5 shillings. So 5 of these gives you 1 of these. Funnily enough, we did actually have a 5-shilling coin, which was the crown. But we only ever minted these in 1937 and 1938. And you can have a look at the video above, the pop-up banner above here, about the Australian crown and how it was one of the most hated coins by everyday Australians, why we didn't like this coin so much. And so therefore, they actually stopped minting these in 1938. And technically speaking, they weren't really in circulation by the time we switched over to the decimal system. Now, it's unfortunate because the 50-cent coin, you could say they suffered pretty much the same fate. It has the same fate of the 1938 coin, but for a very different reason. And here's what the reasons are. So the 50-cent coin, when it was first released to the Australian public, people didn't like it, once more. And the reason for that was because it was too similar, it looked and felt too similar to the 20-cent coin. I know you're looking at it now, oh, the design looks very different, sure, but it had almost the same size. It has the same shape, same feel, same weight, really, and the same color. So everyday cashier, people handling the till, handling change for everyday transactions back in the day, they would confuse the 50-cent coin with the 20-cent coin on the fly. So therefore, they had to really look at the design to make sure they're not confusing the change. And that's what it made this coin so disliked by the Australian public. Now, the Royal Australian Mint actually started to take note of that, and they also started to notice that the price of silver actually started to spike By the time it was 1967, the intrinsic bullion value of the silver inside the coin actually became worth more than 50 cent itself, in which case, the Royal Australian Mint will actually start losing money if they continue to make this coin out of silver. And of course, the Australian public also noticed that as well. And so therefore, quite a few Aussies actually started to hoard these coins. They took it out of circulation, they kept it in jars. Some of them even melted it down for profit illegally. You can't melt current existing circulating coins, at least here in Australia. So a lot of people actually started to hoard these instead of spend these. So there lies three very, very valid reasons as to the reason why the 50-cent coin was no longer a viable coin for the Royal Australian Mint to mint them. It became very expensive to produce them. People actually started hoarding them instead of spending them because it was worth more than the face value of the coin, and it was being confused by the 20-cent coin when handling as change. And so therefore, the Royal Australian Mint stopped producing them after 1966. 1967, 1968, you will not find any more 50-cent coins in circulation. But instead, it wasn't until 1969 that the Royal Australian Mint re-released and redesigned the shape of the coin as well as the composition of the coin to this. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the 50-cent coin that every Aussie knows and loves today. As you can see, it still kept the original coat of arms design. It still has the same effigy on the reverse of the coin, on the obverse of the coin. But of course, it's no longer circular. They made it dodecagonal, which is a 12-sided coin, to distinguish it very clearly from the 20-cent coin. And of course, the coin itself was no longer made out of 80% silver. It was now made out of a copper nickel alloy. And we've had that same composition of alloy, same design for the 50-cent coin ever since. So that's what makes the 1966 Australian 50-cent coin so special. It is the only 50-cent coin that is round, and is the only circulating decimal coin that we have that's made out of silver. How awesome is that? Now, I did say that they are a circulating coin, but technically you won't find any more of these in circulation, primarily because everyday Australians are going to know that this is what a 50 cent is. So if they do see something like this, they're more likely going to take it out of circulation, keep it, thinking that, it's a rare coin or something, before they even realize that this actually is a silver coin. And, people actually stack and trade these as silver bullion coins. So you probably won't find these in your coin rolls when you take it out of the bank anymore. There's about 36.5 million of these coins that were ever made. About 14 million of them were ever issued to the public from the banks, and a vast majority of those 14 million were taken out of circulation by private hands. The remaining 22.5 were held by the mint, and they were later melted down for its silver value. So yeah, expect roughly about 14 million of these beautiful pieces of Australian junk silver, and I hate calling it junk silver, but effectively that's what they are. The constitutional junk silver coins that are technically still in circulation, still legal tender. Now, I said at the start of the video that these coins are Australia's most preferred method to stack silver, and it really comes down to three reasons. The first reason is got to do with the premium. So if you walk into any local coin shop or most bullion dealers, you'll find that the premiums for these beautiful silver coins is usually the lowest premium that you'll find for any silver product that they have. For example, I walked into my local bullion dealer earlier in the week to buy one of these 50-cent coins, and I only paid 8% above the spot price of silver at the time. Whereas the cheapest 1 ounce silver coin they had, and it was government issued as well, the cheapest 1 ounce silver coin they had, which was an Australian kangaroo, they were actually paying 10% above the spot price of silver. And they were also secondary bullion too. So this really does beat most bullion coins in terms of its premium. Fantastic to stack. Great for stackers. And it does also lead me to the second reason why these are Australia's most preferred method to stack bullion silver. And that second reason is because they also are very, very recognizable. You go into any local coin shop, you go into most bullion dealers, they will know what this coin is. They will know that this coin has 0.3416 troy ounces of silver, and they will actually more often than not pay spot price or close to spot price for the coin should you want to sell it to them. So it is a very liquid coin. And the last reason has got to do with counterfeits. I mean, counterfeiting a modern 1 ounce silver bar or silver coin is a massive global issue. But counterfeiting a specific 1966 alloyed coin, which is 80% silver, 20% copper, with precise historical dimensions and weights, you know, and the amount of security features that it has, specifically with its rimming as well, it is very hard to counterfeit. You know, it is economically not viable for the fraudsters to counterfeit this beautiful coin. And it's also, you know, an official Australian legal tender. It still remains an official Australian legal tender coin. So those are the three reasons why the Australian round 50-cent coin from 1966 is Australia's most preferred method to stack silver. In fact, it is also my most preferred method to stack silver. These are absolutely beautiful historical coins that have a very funny start in its history and have remained ever since a coin for our benefit as stackers to have. Let's do a little bit of a ASMR moment with these beautiful coins, shall we? Have a listen to this. Ooh, nothing sounds as beautiful as these nice stack of 20 Australian round 50-cent coins clacking just like that. Listen to this. Oh, look at that. I'll tell you what's more satisfying than that are coin flips. Let's try that again. Listen to that. Let's see if we can get it nice and clean. Hear that beautiful spring. Absolutely gorgeous. So I've got 20 of these in my stack. So let's start talking some numbers. As of the 26th of August 2026, the current spot price of silver is sitting at $95.35, and that's in Australian dollars. Now, if we just looked at the value, the silver content value of one of these coins, and it currently contains about 0.3416 troy ounces, against that current spot price, that would equate to $32.57, again, in Australian dollars. That's how much this coin is worth. Now, of course, I have 20 of them. So that would mean I have 651 Australian dollars worth of silver, worth of Australian junk silver that you see here in this little tray. Not bad for a face value of, what is it, 10 Australian dollars? 20 times 50-cent coins. Not too bad. Not too bad indeed. Now, I'd like to leave you guys with a little bit of food for thought. So, at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of 2026, in January, we saw silver prices go as high as, well, it actually exceeded 160 Australian dollars an ounce in January of 2026, which meant that to buy one of these beautiful silver 1966 Australian 50-cent coins, it would have costed you 50 or more than 50 Australian dollars. Can you imagine paying 100 times the face value of this coin to acquire the coin? And that was the reality for quite a lot of us in January of 2026. So my question I'd like to ask you guys is, do you guys think we'll ever see that day again where we would have to pay 50 Australian dollars for a 50-cent coin? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're there, also let me know, do you guys stack these beautiful 1966 Australian 50-cent coins? And if you do, how many do you have? I've only got 20 in my stack, and I would like to increase it to 50 over the next couple of years. Well, thank you guys for watching my video, and do please give it a like, a thumbs up in above the comments if you've enjoyed it, and also subscribe if you're interested in seeing more videos such as this. And also check out my playlist for the Australian Junk Silver series for all the other coins that we had circulating in our great continent that had a little bit of silver in them. Thank you guys for watching, and have a good one.
In come the dollars and in come the cents to replace the pounds and the shillings and the pence. Be prepared, folks, when the coins begin to mix on the 14th of February 1966. Clink go the cents, folks, clink, clink, clink. Change over day is closer than you think. Learn the value of the coins and the way that they appear, and things will be much smoother when the decimal point is here. In come the dollars and in come the cents to replace the pounds and the shillings and the pence. Be prepared, folks, when the coins begin to mix on the 14th of February 1966.